What's going on, everybody? My name is Trey Smith with Scoop Pros, and today I am here to teach you how to deal with dangerous dogs. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel to learn all you can about the pet waste removal business. Also, comment down below any questions you may have relating to the pet waste removal business, and I'll do my best to answer them. Alright, now let's get back to how to deal with dangerous dogs. Okay, so my first tip when dealing with dangerous dogs is to text the owner before you arrive to the yard. This one is the biggest and most important thing, because if you text the owner before you arrive, this makes sure that they have the dog inside and not out in the yard when you get there. And you also want to be sure that the owner responds, because there are times when you may text the owner, they may not see the text, and you can be in the yard with the dog that you don't want to be out there with. This is something I did with every one of the owners I had that had a dangerous dog. You figure these things out before you get them as a customer through a questionnaire that you develop online, but we will cover that in a video later down the line. Now, if the owner does not respond to your text and you are worried that the dog may still be in the yard or may be let out while you're there, this is very important to not go into the yard until you are for sure that the owner responds and knows that you are there, because the last thing you want to do is be stuck out there with a dog who is aggressive and can potentially risk a big injury to yourself and just a big issue that you do not want to deal with. Now, what I always did if the owner did not respond to the text, I would give them about 5 or 10 minutes to respond, and if they didn't respond, I would just move to the next yard because time is money and you can't waste a lot of time just sitting around, and a lot of the times the owners would understand and it was no issue at all. Okay, so my next tip would be to have the owner introduce you to the dogs before you start scooping the yard, and to learn the dogs' names. This will help ensure that the dogs know a little bit more about you. They're introduced to you, they see you around their owner. It helps them understand that the owner is accepting of you in the yard, and it also builds a relationship with you and that dog. Now, this is something I've done a few times on a few separate occasions. I had a customer who had a really large yard and he had 2 pretty big German Shepherds. He said that they were a little bit territorial and pretty protective, but he introduced us to the dogs, and we never had any issues with them because we learned their names. As soon as we get into the yard, if they happen to be out in the yard, we would just speak to the dogs, say their names, and then just not pay much attention to them and just let them roam around while we were out there, and we had never had any issues with them. Now, I have had other situations where I was introduced to the dogs and it did not go so well. I had a customer who had 3 Cane Corsos, and I was introduced to them. It was all fine. But as soon as I was out there in the yard with the dog by myself, it charged at me, wouldn't stop barking, and I thought the dog was gonna eat me alive. Thankfully, he was still there and came back out and got the dog, but that is an example of a dog that needs to be put up every time that you go to the yard, and that was a customer that I would always text before I would ever get there to make sure that dog was put up, because even after introducing myself to the dog and being introduced by the owner, it still was a problem dog. So you just have to watch out for that as well, and just always be alert and be aware of your surroundings, because you never really know what's going to happen. So my next tip is to always have protection. This is just worst case scenario. If you get bit or you're being under attack by a large dog or something that's really dangerous, you want to have some protection on you. Most preferably something non-lethal, something that's not going to severely injure the dog, but something that will get you away from it, get you to safety. This would include something like pepper spray or a taser if possible. We would always carry pepper spray with us just in case a dog was gonna attack us. Thankfully, that never happened. We never had to use pepper spray. We never had to use a taser. But we'd like to have them on us just in case, because you never know. We had to deal with quite a bit of different dangerous dogs, such as Rottweilers, Cane Corsos, Doberman Pinschers. These dogs have a bad reputation, but they're all very nice and loving dogs, but sometimes you get a bad apple and you don't know what they're gonna do. So you always just want to have that protection on you to make sure you're protecting yourself or your employees, because you don't want to risk your life scooping a yard, you know. This would only be used in a worst case scenario because you don't want to severely injure any dogs. Obviously, that would be devastating for the owners, and it would probably be devastating for your business. My next tip is to stay calm and avoid eye contact with the dog if you do get in a bad situation. For example, my very worst experience scooping any yards, I was in a pretty rough neighborhood and the owner had a German Shepherd. I didn't follow any of my own rules, and this was my fault, and this is exactly why you need to listen to these steps. I was training a new employee, and then we went to this yard. I texted the owner that we were arriving shortly, and I didn't get a response, but I still went in the yard anyways. So when we get to the yard, we were scooping and everything was fine. I had my back turned, we both had our backs turned, and then we both turn around, and then the German Shepherd is just standing there staring at us right behind us. This dog was labeled aggressive by the owner before we even started scooping the yard, so I knew it was a dangerous dog. As soon as we turn around, the dog charges at us, barks at us, stands 3 feet away from us, just looking at us, and all we could do was stand there. Another problem with this situation is I had no pepper spray, I had no taser, no protection, and I left my phone in the car, which is all a complete nightmare. But thankfully, the owner came out of the back door and hollered, and then I yelled her name and asked her to bring back the dog, take the dog back inside, and thankfully we got out of that situation with no issues. But that could have been a very dangerous situation. I had no protection, I didn't have my phone, and it was just a nightmare. I didn't wait for the customer to respond. That's exactly why you need to follow these steps, because that could have ended very differently if the owner went to the bathroom and didn't hear us or anything. That could have been very dangerous just in those few seconds or few moments. So that's another thing, to definitely have your phone on you in case the dog is let out, to be able to call the owner if they can't hear you from outside, so they can answer their phone and come get the dog, because that could be a very dangerous situation. And that's definitely a situation you want to avoid, because that was very risky and a very big mistake on my part. This has happened also in another yard. I did have protection and everything. The owner knew I was there and for some reason let the dog out anyway, and it was a Rottweiler that was very aggressive. The thing would not stop barking. We were just out scooping in the yard. We never had any issues with it being let out before. But the dog was just let out and just came up and ran up right up on us, and was very aggressive, and I thought it was going to be a very dangerous situation, and it definitely could have been. But thankfully the owner came back and let the dog back in. But just because you text an owner doesn't mean they're always, even if they do know you're there, they still let the dogs out sometimes, so you have to be careful. And that's why you always need to have protection and always be aware, prepared for any situation. Alright everybody, that's all I have for you today on how to deal with dangerous dogs. Just be sure to follow those tips and guidelines to keep yourself safe. Once again, like and subscribe to my channel if you find these videos useful, and comment below if you have any other questions about the pet waste removal business. Thank you guys and have a great day.